Moving yourself and moving your business overseas can dramatically reduce, if not eliminate, your tax. And especially when you're starting a business, that extra money, coupled with the lower cost of living in many countries overseas, can go a long way to help you reinvest that money back into your business and increase your impact on the world. But people want to know, when should I make that move and how do I do it with the least strain on my business? I'm going to answer that question. So Julia asks me, what about beginner entrepreneurs who have not made their millions? Would you advise them to live in their high-tax homeland until they've made it? We've started 5 years ago and are struggling to grow, partially due to the taxes and high cost of living in the UK, but all these lower tax countries you suggested are too expensive for us to move to right now. Golden visas, second home programs with bank deposits, Switzerland, Italy, for sure not. We can't afford them. I'm going to give you my perspective on this as someone who has not only helped people do this for a long time, and has lived this lifestyle myself for even longer. This is the part that comes only with experience, which a lot of folks that you'll see online don't have. And the simple answer to this question is the answer to anything else that you're going to do in life, is you have to take action when the pain of doing nothing exceeds the pain of doing something. You have to accept there's going to be pain. And I'm not saying it's going to be a miserable experience or you're going to hate it. If you can't afford a service like Nomad Capitalist, where we've trained everybody to handle paperwork and the stuff off your plate, then it's going to be frustrating. I was just talking to a friend of mine today who could have afforded to hire Nomad Capitalist and chose, not, I'll do it myself. And he's sending me message after message like how hard the paperwork is. So I think that it's going to be a bureaucratic experience. Where you choose to go, he chose to move to Spain, so I mean we knew that was going to be more bureaucratic than moving somewhere lighter weight. But you just got to accept that's going to be part of the process, and you're going to have to do that. And then when you come out the other side, life's going to be better. That's how anything works. That's what made you successful in business in the first place. You sacrificed and sacrificed and sacrificed, and then eventually, something good came out the other end. But there was that pain all along, and so if you are more comfortable living with the current pain that you have, then going through the new pain and dealing with all the unknown unknowns of how do we move to a new country and how do we set everything up, because it does require kind of a multifaceted approach. Only when you're ready and say, I just can't take it anymore, only then you can do it. Because here's the thing, it's going to be painful for a while. But here's what's even more painful. And I've told you the story of a couple different clients like this. One guy came to us and he said, hey, I'm thinking of renouncing my US citizenship. The taxes are crazy. I don't want to live here. I don't really like it here. And we went through this whole scenario, and he had raised, I forget the exact amount, but let's just call it $50 million for 30% of his company. And he had the rest. So now he's got a company worth $110, $120 million. And if he were to renounce US citizenship, or if he's living in a different country and he wanted to cut his tax ties, become a non-resident for tax purposes, in the case of the US and a number of other countries, there would be an exit tax or a deemed disposition tax, or call it whatever you want in the country that you live in, where they would act as if he sold those shares because, hey, you built that wealth up on our country. That's the pain of he literally couldn't afford to leave the country he didn't want to live in. And so, if it doubles eventually, well, now his problem doubled. He can't afford to leave. And we had to ask him, can you sell some share? Can you get some liquidity to pay the exit tax? And I think in his case, he couldn't. So, the way to analyzing, current pain is analyzing that versus future pain. And again, entrepreneurs should understand this better than anybody else, because it's all about how do I take pain now to not have pain later, right? And you can apply this to anything, right? I mean, if you're single and you want to meet someone, sure, it may be less painful to sit on the couch and with a bowl of crisps and watch a movie on Friday night. But if you want to meet someone, the future pain of not getting off your butt is going to be worse than the pain of going out and figuring out where you're going to go and meet somebody. And so I've invested in second passports and backup plans and multiple bank accounts. And I had another friend of mine who's been doing some of this stuff, and he said, I struggle to open one bank account. I don't know how you opened 40 or 50 or whatever the number is, because they're all such a pain. And yet I look back now that it's all done and I say, thank goodness I did that. So let's get into some specifics. Here's the big takeaways. The biggest expense a business owner generally will have is taxes. That could be the corporate income tax if you're running it through a corporation, If you're in the UK, Australia, Canada, where you've got a separate corporation and then you dividend out the money later, or if you're in the US and you just have an LLC or some similar structure elsewhere. Income tax at all those levels. VAT, if that's something that impacts you, payroll tax on your employees. You add up all the taxes, that's a lot of money. That's the biggest expense that you're going to have. And so, yeah, I think that you want to reduce that. Now, the issue is you're trying to go to the final spot now, and you're looking at the well-marketed solutions. So, okay, I talk about Malaysia, my second home, but Malaysia has digital nomad visa, for example. Malaysia had other visa programs. Thai investor visa. There's other ways to go to Thailand. Golden visas, yeah, there's freelancer visas, there's company visas in other countries in Europe. There's all kinds of different things that you can do. So here's the thing I see in this question. We're talking about golden visas and residences that require bank deposits and expensive countries. You want to find the inexpensive countries. You look for a country that has somewhere 0 to 10% tax, or that has a territorial tax system. I wouldn't be getting fancy if I'm just starting out, both from the complexity standpoint as well as the actual cost standpoint with like a lump sum program or a non-dom. You're not ready for that. You're looking for a kind of simple bread and butter, zero tax, low tax, or territorial tax system. Territorial tax being where money that's earned outside of the country isn't taxed in that country. Now, what you do want to do on territorial tax countries is evaluate, what is deemed local source income. And if you are one of 2 employees in a business and you're living in that country 9 months a year, are they going to deem you as the employee, not the owner, but the employee contributing a serious chunk, and then you need to pay? Or is there some kind of CFC rule? So there's still some planning to be done. But you're looking for places that have simple tax regimes, potentially something like in Eastern Europe where there's flexible tax regimes, like no CFC rules, that could work also. But you're not looking to get too crazy. You're also looking for a place that's affordable. So what I'm seeing in the question here is Switzerland, countries like that, yeah, that's just too expensive to move to. I'm also seeing golden visas, bank deposits. You don't want to do that. What you want to find is the following. Now, Italy's mentioned. From a cost of living perspective, Italy's not bad. The problem is their tax regime that is more favorable with the discounts for like small business owners, freelancers. It's not future-proof. Here's what you want. You want a simple tax regime. It could be 0% tax, and that's going to be harder because a place like Dubai is not going to be as cheap to live in, and it's not 0% for your business anymore. Or you could find like a low tax. So find a country that just has a low tax rate, so Bulgaria, for example, where it's just 9% or 10% or whatever. Or a territorial tax country where they don't tax your foreign income. Or a flexible tax country where there's like no CFC rules. You do want to evaluate, if you're one of the few people in the company, what is territorial. If you're like the only employee or one of 2 employees, can you work in the country as the employee? Because basically, you're the owner, but you're also an employee, right? Owners don't have to work in the business, and employees don't have to own the business. You have to look at both sides of the equation. But you want to look at a more simple regime like that. And yeah, I would stay out of these regimes like, even though Italy is a decent regime for freelance workers, that's not going to be very future-proof. Because what you also want is you want to ideally set up your company somewhere that is future-proof, where it could be in the BVI or in Hong Kong or any number of places. And that way, when you decide to leave the affordable place in the future, you can easily do that, and you don't have to redo your entire corporate structure and take your eye off the ball at a time when you're more successful. It's going to be more annoying. There's going to be more stuff to change. You have too many ingrained banking and payment processing relationships. Your clients are used to all kinds of things. Set up the corporate structure part as early on as possible somewhere, and then live somewhere affordable where the tax regime hopefully is neutral to that corporate structure, to where your company is in the British Virgin Islands, and if your company is determined to where, hey, we don't need the most robust payment processing, we can do bank wires, we'll get some smaller bank, and as we get more money, we'll get better banks, whatever, or we'll have a multi-part structure. Set that structure up now, and then you live somewhere else where the BVI part almost doesn't matter. And maybe you pay tax on your salary in a country where salary taxes are low. Maybe you go to a place like Georgia where you can sign up for the 1% regime, or even the 0% regime. So you're looking for something like that. But you're looking to keep costs low, and you're looking to set up your corporate structure that can move. You don't want to be like, I'm going to move to Georgia and set up a Georgian company, and then it's like, 20% tax all in, and then when I start making millions, I'll move my entire company somewhere else. Like, it's going to be a mess, right? Move to Georgia if the company is somewhere else, right? And so you're looking for tax regimes where, again, it's either low tax or where the foreign structure is invisible legally, or both. And you want to set yourself up for that long-term success on the corporate side. Because if you look at my tax-friendly quadrant, it's where are you leaving personally, which means you're leaving your country. Now, if you're an American, there's a whole separate set of things. And then where are you arriving personally? So we've covered where you're arriving, but you got to make sure you leave your country's tax net. Where's your business leaving? So you got to figure out how to unravel the business you have now. So the earlier the better, right? Before you get lots of assets that have to be disposed of and all that kind of stuff. And before your country maybe decides to make it more difficult to do that or raise the tax rates. And then where are you arriving? And so those are the things that you want to keep in mind. The question is, do you want to pay now or pay later? And so I do think it's worth investing a bit more in a structure that you're happy with long-term to actually run the business, that you're not screwing around when you decide to move to your ultimate destination. Hey, I'm going to move to Italy and I'm going to pay 200,000 euros a year flat tax because now I'm making 3 million a year. And that's a great deal for all of us. You don't want to be doing that and moving the corporate structure. Now, if you want to live in a place like Dubai and you're happy to pay 9% and that's a place you want to live long term and you can find a way to affordably live there for now, that's not a bad option. You could do that. But understand that, again, it's going to be messier to unravel if you decide, hey, now I'm making that $3 million, 9%, and I don't, I maybe Dubai's not the place I want to live, and it's hard to move everything. It's, and now why would I pay? That's not what you want to do. So, I would, do you want to pay now or do you want to pay later? I would find an easier, cheaper place, just from the compliance standpoint as well as the cost of living, to move from the personal side, that personal side of the quadrant, and I would invest more into setting up the proper corporate structure. I would also look beyond, stated corporate tax rates. So she mentions Italy, for example. Italy has very high tax rates, but they've got lower rates for the first 5 to 10 years, depending on where you move in the country, if you bring in kind of your own freelance business operation. Now, the challenge there is, again, the legal structure that you're required to set up or not set up, in the case of Italy, to run that, and how it's not very future-proof. But a country could have a 20% tax rate, but if there's no CFC rules, for example, and you can exclude a lot of that income, then that could be a better way to go. Another thing I would look at, particularly if I'm American, but if I'm other Western nationalities as well, or if I've got a really bad passport, I would look at, can I get a second passport by moving there? Now, a lot of low tax places aren't really going to offer you a passport. Bulgaria potentially could be a place to get a passport. Georgia, they did make it a little bit easier to get citizenship through naturalization there. Asian and Middle Eastern countries aren't really going to do citizenship. Theoretically, somewhere in Central America, you could work to get citizenship there. So if I can find a place to get second citizenship, that's good. And that may protect me from whatever my country does in the future to complicate my plans. If you're an American, there's already an extra layer to this that we talked about in other episodes. You might decide it's not worth being an American living overseas. Well, are you going to rely on higher business profits in the future to go and acquire citizenship by investment? Or if you could be living somewhere for 5 years working towards that. Cyprus now may not apply to all entrepreneurs, but they've got this 3-year program. You can work towards citizenship. Ireland has the same. Now that's a more complicated system. That's a non-dom system. That's probably one that you're not ready for, and housing is extremely expensive there. But those are the kinds of things that I would look at. I think that you kind of have to bite the bullet. Same thing I tell people who are invested in Bitcoin and crypto. You can take out part of your crypto now and get that second citizenship to protect yourself. So when your crypto 10x's or whatever you expect to happen, you're going to be protected then. But guess what? It's going to be painful now to take some out and say, oh, now I've got $200,000 less crypto. Yeah. And sure, that'll be worth something. But all the other crypto you have will be worth much more, and it won't be taxed in the future. And that's the same thing about your business. And so that's the kind of thing that you want to keep in mind. Get comfortable not having to go to the one place you're going to stay forever. To me, that's part of the adventure. If you're an entrepreneur, you're going to learn something every place that you go. And so go to the cheap country to begin with. Maybe you find some opportunity that's available there. Maybe for an on-the-ground business, as if things don't work out, but more importantly, they're going to do things differently. All right? And so if you're an American, Sure, if you make millions, you can move to Ireland and you can reduce your taxes, and that's not going to be a culture shock, but you're also not going to learn that much new stuff going to a culture that's that similar. You want to create some friction in your life that's going to teach you about how to run a better business. And I think that friction comes from being in different cultures, that friction comes from being in a different socioeconomic part of the world. And if you get comfortable with, hey, I'm going to go here for X years, I'm going to reinvest everything, I'm going to be disciplined, and then I'm going to go to the next place. Maybe you'll change that plan along the way, but you're going to get comfortable knowing that things do change and there's different seasons in life, which I think every entrepreneur needs to know.